Hello friends, it's Pauline Nguyen. Welcome to this inaugural season of Conversations with Purrr. And they are conversations, they're not interviews. Join me as I connect with and converse with some of the leading outliers, the mavericks, the extraordinary, those who are courageous enough to question the status quo, to push the boundaries and actually do something about it. The conversations will be insightful, they'll be deep and ever so delicious over a cup of Tiger Purrr chai. It is my joy, it is my honor, I'm completely delighted that my very good friend Alistair Trung is joining us for the very first conversation with Purrr over a delicious cup of Tiger Purrr chai.
It's actually fantastic to be here because this is actually my favorite space to actually just to have conversations with people, and so I think it's actually this is a very nice revisit.
Yes.
That's what it's all for me, you know. It's great conversations and great performances.
Yes.
You know.
Let us
So
perform.
yeah, no, but like, you know, you want to see great performance on stage or wherever, but also you actually want to get really intense and actually have a really deep talk and listening.
I've been wearing Alistair's clothes now for almost 20 years. Alistair Trung, the label, was founded in 2000, and the creative, the designer, the creative genius is here with us today. And I'm so very grateful because I know that Alistair does not do interviews very often, quite rarely actually, but this is not an interview, it is a conversation with Purrr. Alistair, I remember meeting you for the first time. I remember the day vividly. I was at Margaret Throsby's book launch of her top 15 interviews ever in her career.
Yes.
I remember the day she called me, and I very rarely pick up unknown numbers. And I was at Yamcha, and I picked up the phone, and she said, "Hello, Pauline, this is Margaret Throsby.
Yes.
I'm putting together a collection of my top 15 interviews ever in my career. Would you mind being one?" I said, "Well, let me think about that for 5 seconds, yes!" And I was so drawn to your energy, Alistair.
Yes, yeah.
I hadn't heard of you at the time. I was very much attracted to your uniqueness and most of all your playfulness and your passion. And then of course I looked into you.
Yes.
I researched what you were all about, and I'm like,
I was a lot more militant then, you know.
oh, there's
So,
this
yeah,
intelligence behind your clothes. There is an intelligence behind your clothes. I remember being dressed by you multiple times in front of your mirror, and you'd say things to me like, "This is an exorcism of the mind," you know. And I remember
You know,
so vividly.
and I meant that too.
And I know it because I hate
yeah,
shopping. I
yes,
hate shopping.
yes,
I go
yes.
and see you twice a
Trust
year.
women who don't shop.
Spend
you know,
up,
I mean,
you know,
that's
and
the other
there's
thing
dress
too.
me, and we're
Yeah.
playing.
Yeah.
And I remember vividly you saying something like, "My clothes start with the brain. They don't start with the body." And I said, of course that it doesn't. It has to start with the brain and the cloth. And then I saw your muses, and it's like, of course you dress Margaret Throsby and a whole lot of other women who I absolutely revere because of their intelligence and their playfulness. And what I love the most is that it's an invitation for me to play, to use it differently. How do you feel today, Pauline? What parts of your body do you want to reveal today? What parts of your body do you want to hide today? Talk to us more about that process of yours. What happens in your world? What happens in the world of Alistair Trung? Who does he look at? Where do you get your inspiration from?
Well, I'm quite a disillusioned person. So, and when I say that, it's actually my process of observation of what's out there. And then how do I actually reconcile that with where I'm at, my psyche?
What are you disillusioned with?
Well, I analyze, and I become disillusioned with where things are at. That I think a lot of things out there are geared to actually robbing people of their ability to process anything for themselves.
Okay.
So I think on multiple levels, and things might seem to be very seductive. It might seem to be actually very sort of like very friendly and it's going to be good for you. But in fact, when you really analyze it, when you really read between the line, it's ultimately marketing, it's PRing, and it all is so seductive, and you can get drawn to it in spite of your intelligence. It doesn't matter how educated you are, all of us are drawn to this vortex.
Without asking.
So I've always had that perspective, and even with the industry itself, I've never felt actually comfortable with it, but a lot of that was also when I first started, was all about me, and my inadequacies. But there was one thing I knew, that there was something out there that's not right. So I sort of carried that, and even now I have it.
What is that? Have you been able to articulate that?
Well, it's the thing I just said to you. I think it's this thing that actually robs people their ability to cultivate anything. It actually stops them from individuating, just to use a Jungian term. So I feel so instinctively, my instinct is that actually, is like, I need to actually correct this. Because for me, it's a necessity. I can't just go and create clothing that's, for the red carpet, and it's not how I think. I think, cloth and clothing, and I actually prefer those words.
Yes.
Because they're actually more basic. Are actually so important, and in it's actually shaping your psyche, who you are. And I wanted to actually. I never wanted to underestimate people's intelligence, so I always actually start from the top, and I always figured I can always go down, but I need to start from the top. So I think it's just maybe the noblest point I could find, that's imbued with what I think in my sort of limited capacity, that's going to help people to come into themselves, because it's all I'm trying to do with me. Yeah. So this is all about me, really. It's actually trying to discover myself. Yeah. And then from my surveying of all the women, just from the store, I'm getting all these echoes, and it's exactly how I feel. So every time I come with an idea that makes sense to me, most of the time, like, if it makes sense to me, it's going to, resonate with people, because we're actually all human beings, so that's the level, I think beyond race, I think beyond sexuality, beyond size, beyond gender, all of these things that I stated before in my sort of mission statement, because I feel that's the level I'm interested in, so, and it's none of these politics that's going on,
Alistair, if you had a magic wand, I remember one time we were over dinner and you said, please don't call me a fashion designer. I hate that term. I detest that term. Yes. And share with me, if you had a magic wand, what are some of the things that you would magically change about how the society, the masses see fashion as we know it? Because fashion as we know it says, here, take this, do exactly as I say, ask no questions, and fit into this box. And I love that it's such a metaphor for society, which is why you analyze, you question, and you put that into your own interpretation.
I wouldn't change anything, because all of these things are our pain teachers. So I think, it's there for a reason. So I think this is, like, you don't want a Messiah to come and rescue you all the time, and you don't want things to be actually nirvana. There's a reason for why things are the way they are, and it's, in fact, it actually is there for us to actually question, so I would not change anything, and it actually is actually grown me as a person, having to question what's out there. So if things were actually just perfect and harmonized, then I'd probably just go in total ignorant bliss, so I think those things actually are highly important. So I would not change anything.
I like that term, pain lessons.
Yeah, well, like, things are pain teachers. So all my friends are actually my teachers, So I know what depression's like. I know when someone's totally a narcissist. And all the things that I apply to myself. So, so like a conversation like this I came this morning, I thought, well, Pauline actually emailed the questions, but in a way, of course, I read through them, and I think they're really good questions, but I didn't want to think about them too much because I wanted to come in a much more abstract, open-ended way, because I wanted to clarify my own thoughts. So an opportunity like this actually helps me to actually clarify what I'm thinking, So when I'm talking to someone, it's always within that context, So yeah.
And I haven't asked any of the questions that I wrote down, by the way. Have you noticed?
Which is fantastic.
I resonate because it's like when I'm speaking on stage and I thrive on the Q&A because it keeps me on my toes.
Yes,
it allows me to expand my vocabulary, my stories, and
it's an adventure. It's an adventure because you don't want to actually just go into this script. Yeah. So I think it's highly important to actually have this spontaneity and then have something that actually just challenges you a bit, and then it takes you into another realm. So I think it's a metaphor of how you want to live, So
I think your clothes are a beautiful metaphor on so many levels.
It's a daily practice, I think the daily level is extremely important. I think there's this thing about clothing, let's get dressed up when we go to a wedding or a red carpet event, and the rest of the time give up, which I think is a mistake, So I think one ought to actually just bring everything onto the daily level. I think it's a level that inspires me the most, So this is why I'm not interested in things for occasions, So I'm not interested in weddings or evening wear or so-called evening wear. I think all of these things are static. Yeah. I think it's more about styling. So you can have a piece, but then you can just tweak it with maybe the shoe or maybe your hair or absolutely an attitude. That can tweak actually the aura of the clothing, So, and these might sound really abstract, but believe me, for someone to actually grasp this, and it's something money cannot buy, it is this intangible, incredible thing that's up to the person to cultivate, and it's the most precious thing beyond the label, beyond the brand. I mean, I don't like this word brand. I think it's very damaging.
Yeah. Why don't you like it? Tell me.
Well, I think it actually arrests the way your soul actually works. So I think these words are not very helpful. And I think it's interesting. I mean, you have this whole generation that's anti-capitalism and anti-the patriarchal and all of this. You can actually speak against about all of these things, but they're not afraid to use that word brand. That actually comes from capitalism. So I don't see anyone questioning that word. So I think these things are also part of the thing that people adapt without questioning.
Yeah.
So, your child's a brand. Everything's a brand. So I think, look, and most people, it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing necessarily, but I'm trying to be much more conscious. I think words are extremely important because that will define how you're going to actually play out. So if you think of it as a brand, there'll be a certain strategy that will follow.
So you have to stick to.
Yeah, because the word actually, the connotations of that will actually ripple through whatever you do. So I never thought of what I do as a brand, and it was actually quite unconscious. Even when I started, there was no such thing. So maybe I was lucky with that. I wasn't actually indoctrinated with that. But even now, where everyone is like this is the language that is like such a norm. But I resisted completely because.
I love that about you, the resistance to a number of things. I get frustrated with things, and as soon as I find that contraction, then I investigate a little bit more, and I investigate
it's
a little
true,
bit more.
But it's an opportunity to expand. So when I question it, I don't actually let that actually, sort of make me depressed or make me nihilistic.
Curious. It's a curiosity.
No, but I get angry. I'm like, fuck that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not putting up with it. Yeah. So I'm tired of this script.
Yeah.
Because it actually is very damaging to people. So to me, it's actually very real. I'm not sitting there and I'm in contact with people and real life. I'm not sitting there imagining these things.
Yes.
And it's actually bad business. If anything, like all of these, I'm not trying to be altruistic and, I'm just doing it because I have to run a business, and it's good business to actually think in these terms.
Yep.
I'm not trying to be someone's guru. Like, I'm trying to get common sense back. Yep. So, and I like to actually, and what I realize is that, what I do also is actually to state the most obvious things. That's my job, actually.
Yes.
This
What
is
are
what
some
I've
of
come
those
to
obvious
realise.
things, Alistair? What are some of those things that frustrate you? So I hear loud and
Yes,
clear
yes,
that
yeah.
some of the things that frustrate you are this lack of questioning, this lack of investigating and just accepting what is, and that sense of here's the box, let's fit into the box. And this is why it's so important that we listen to the outliers, that we
Yes.
listen to those who think differently, because it's an
Yes.
invitation for
Yes.
us also to think differently and
Yes.
expand
Well,
ourselves. What are some other things
well-
that you hear from other women?
Well, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Women all the time complain about their weight in the store. So I remember last year I said to someone, this woman was actually literally was like, oh, I'm fat, I'm this, I'm that, I don't on my hips, I'm just fat. And I just listened to her and I actually said to her, look, objectively, I can tell you objectively that you're actually an average sized human being, but you have the most obese brain I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Your brain's obese. I said to her,
And how did she respond?
Well, she went all red. But actually, I can see her processing it.
Yeah.
But once, it clicked in, she totally understood. And, I speak like this on a daily basis with people. But I've never had a woman said to me, you're so rude, I'm never going to come back to your store again. I've never had that reaction ever, actually. So most of the time, or all the time, I can tell you, well, I don't know, they might go behind my back and say, oh, what a bitch. I don't know what
But
people
we're
think.
okay that they're not okay.
Face to face,
Yeah.
and this is, I can only judge that people, once it click in, the common sense is actually very powerful.
Yeah.
It's like the clothing. It might look a bit obscure, like, what is that? Like, how do you wear that? And by the way, when they ask me that, I think it's a compliment. I don't get put off by it.
Yeah.
They're curious.
Yeah,
So I
and then
think
you're
it's
like,
a very
let
good
me show
start.
you the
And then
ways.
we'll have a play, right? And I only need to actually spend like 20 minutes, half an hour. And once people witness that common sense, it clicks in very, very naturally. So, I have faith in people.
Yeah.
Even though they indoctrinated and going along like zombies, when you offer something that actually grounded in common sense and goodness and intelligence, I think people click into it.
Yeah.
I really believe that.
I remember the one of the occasions where I went and into your store and we were having a play in front of your mirror.
Yes,
And I was carrying some extra weight because I'd just given birth to my son Jethro. And you
I don't
said
know how you do
something, and you said something so pertinent. You said, Pauline, don't ever diet. Let the clothes do the dieting for you. Okay, show me how to hide this and show me how to do this.
It's true. And I love how, this is all from the process of working. And then you just come out with these phrases.
Yes.
Because this is purely from the process. And it's something you could never really dream of, where you sit there and do this thing. It's a very spontaneous thing.
Yeah.
And in fact, that statement is a whole lesson in there, isn't there?
So, absolutely.
And I think people always resonate with that because they know instinctively it's very juicy. There's something there that's truthful.
Yes. It's this open proposal, as you say.
Yes.
What do I need to do today to feel the way I want to feel?
But it's truthful and it's not a marketing spin.
No.
I'm not trying to sell you anything. We're just speaking and we're just expanding into this thing and trying to make sense of this chaos that we're all in.
Yeah.
So,
Alistair, let's rewind a little bit.
Yeah.
And you once told me that your playfulness, your sense of design, thank you, my friend, started in your magnificent garden in Saigon.
Oh, yes.
That was your playground. Tell me about that playground and your global playground now. Talk to us a bit about that.
I grew up in Saigon, Vietnam, and I had such an arboreal childhood because I had a huge garden.
Nice.
So I was, I don't even remember having siblings. I have 3 other siblings. I don't remember them at all because I was up in the trees all the time, up in the mango trees. And I remember eating green ants and disturbing their nests and the green ants on a mango tree have this incredible texture. It's mucus with like this raffia thing. No, it's actually all mango leaves. In fact, that's actually bound together, but they spit out this glue.
Yes.
And it's like this white cloudy color. So I remember just being amongst the trees. So, so I didn't have television, I didn't absorb any of that, I didn't even have toys. And in fact, actually, one of my first toys was actually pairs of chopsticks that I had, and I used to get banana palm, and I used to shred them and then wrap that around the chopsticks, and they were like my dolls. So I remember
wonderful.
that.
What a
So
great visual.
yeah,
All
so
dancing around.
Yeah, so I make my own toys, but it was actually in this canopy all the time, amongst with the creepy crawlies, and this is why I have no aversion to spiders and snakes and insects and things. So it's from that, and the monsoon. That's why I remember that. I mean, it's a very eroticized state. Just have all of this water. I was surrounded by water. And I think that's all embedded in me, and it's the sultry earthiness of the soil, and just this heavy rain, and then the aftermath of it, just all the sludge and the fish. I had lots of fish breeding, and so very fertile.
Yes, and going into your ateliers and your shops, there's fisherman stuff and there's tribal stuff, and you're very hands-on, you're very playful, and your arboreal magnificent garden in Saigon is now global, right? And you love going to visit tribes and getting immersed in it. Share with us the process of that, and then how does that lead to this beautiful next collection?
Well, I think it's just I don't strategize. This is the thing, and it's not become a designer. It just happened, and I'm not that strategic, even though people think that no one believes me, and it's actually a bit. And I understand
hear you just
why.
bought a computer.
I know I did. I know. I've never had a computer, so but. This is what happens, that you actually can manage to do all of these things and run a good thriving business.
Yeah.
And this is what I've learned, is that people tell you have to do this, you have to jump on a bandwagon of doing this, doing that, or else you're going to be left out. And I understand that, it also depends on the scale of the business. I always wanted to have a small business. And actually, I never thought about global, so I don't think like that.
Yes.
I'm not.
But you love to travel. You love to get
I mean, I do all of that. I mean,
yeah.
it's for me. That's the reason for travel. But I never thought of my business as like a global business. It's not what I think, because I'm so happy here in Sydney. And I truly believe you just create it, and people will come. And normally, when the people are attracted to what you do, they normally are good for you.
Alistair, I want to speak to two things that are important to me. This sense of, you said earlier, this sense of transgender, appreciating both the masculine and the feminine. You also design for the male body. I love you wear your clothes, it's beautiful. For myself, this incredible sense of freedom, not only freedom of expression, but freedom of movement.
Yes.
I can move in your clothes.
It's highly important.
And also the movement of the cloth.
Yep.
There's this eroticism that is part of it. There's this sense of mystery that is part of it. There's this sense of intelligence and maturity and common sense, And I know that when I wear a piece of clothing of yours, I can move, my bits can breathe,
Exactly.
That's what I love about it.
It should be like
talk to me about the movement, how important that is.
I mean, when you jump into the water, everything actually accommodates. It just works along with the contour of your body.
Yeah.
It can expand or shrink or, I actually work directly on my own body in the studio. This is my process. I don't even drape on a mannequin. So I mean, my instinct is actually I put on me. And actually, when I first started, I used to put on bra. If I needed breasts, I just put on a strap on a bra. But even I've tossed that out. So I just go like that. Well, just pretend like I've got breasts. But it's actually about actually getting really connected with what you're doing. And I think so. These are the sort of methods that I've actually just come to. Very instinctively, because for me it's necessary, and you find your own way, you find your own processes. So not only that you're actually designing clothing. You're actually designing the way you think, the processes, and I think, and this is how you actually individuate into yourself. But I mean, I'm probably a frustrated choreographer, you know. So I'm very, movement is very natural to me, and I have actually worked with choreographers, you know. It's very important to actually just, you know, I mean, you catch a bit of the breeze going through like a slit, and it's sensuality, and it's the unspoken part of dressing that we don't hear about. Everything is actually about this two-dimensional, this posing thing, and everyone's just posing, you know, pretending they're so sexy.
And it's true, Alistair. They think they look sexy, but they don't feel sexy. It's constricted.
It's true. So I think a lot of it is visual.
Yeah.
So I think I like to put the emphasis on actually the visceral and sensuality and things that are intangible. Because in fact, you know, elegance and dignity and all of these things are actually defined by a lot of intangible things.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the time, you know, I mean, sometimes I see a really elegant person on the street and they just like this aura that you sense. It's not about detail. I just get this very strong feeling of their aura.
Yeah.
And I say, God, that's an elegant person.
Because it's how they feel. It's
Yeah,
the energetics
it's a
that
movement,
they're
it's
emitting.
something, and it's beyond the clothing. And I think this is something that's a bit difficult to explain.
Yeah.
But I like to people to get on that level. And I think women understand this. Once they get something on that actually truly liberates them, they can come into themselves, and it's not a compromise. It's just like,
It's not a compromise. It's a beautiful fit and fitting.
It is. It's like pajamas you can wear out. I mean, I love the idea of that. Everything I like to do is the pajamas you can wear out. You know, so it's you feel like you haven't left your bed.
It's freedom. It's freedom.
Yeah.
Freedom of expression. Freedom of movement.
And stop sanitizing, because I think, you know, there's so much repression.
Yeah.
And I think people go on about the Middle East and how burqas are repressive and all of this, but I think we also don't listen to the other side. It's a judgment. I mean, to put on a bikini, that requires a lot of repression. You've got to go on a diet, you've got to wax, you've got to move your body in a certain way. So I don't think that's freedom necessarily, you know? So I think that is also repression. I mean, certain things that we do that we feel like I have to put it on or I feel ugly or get judged, like makeup. I mean, you know, in a sense also that it's a discipline, you know. So, yeah.
Alistair, I can talk with you for hours. There's so much depth and width and deliciousness. I'd love to finish off by letting you know how timeless your clothes are to me.
Yes.
I've been wearing your clothes for almost 20 years. They've seen me through so many different experiences. My daughter steals my clothes.
Fantastic.
My son plays with your clothes.
Fantastic.
And so I don't throw any of your pieces away because they are timeless. I still wear the pieces that I bought all those years ago now.
Yes.
Talking about space and time and timelessness, what's in store for Alistair Trung in the future? Do you see that far? What's in store for the future?
I
for you?
can't really commit
What can we
to
look
like
forward to?
dinner in 2 weeks. I mean, people are very organized, and I actually admire it. I need a bit of that myself, but I can't even commit to, you know, like a dinner that's 2 weeks ahead. So I'm bad at planning. So I mean, I'm such a now person. So, but I do have actually, I'm working with Gene Sherman.
Wonderful.
You know, and on this thing with the government, the Australian and United Kingdom.
Yep.
It's a creative thing that they're doing, an exchange. And
Wow.
I'm doing an exhibition.
In the UK?
At the Design Museum.
Okay.
In London
Okay.
Design Museum. And this is through Gene's patronage.
Yes.
And I'm doing that with Akira
Oh,
Isagawa.
wonderful.
So that's in London in
When is that?
October. You know,
Wonderful.
late October, you know. So yeah, so
How exciting.
that-
Alistair
that
Trung
would
and
be
Akira
good.
Isagawa.
well, I mean, so I think it's so that's. But I don't think it's a fashion type context. It's not Gene,
Experiential,
you know. So
man.
it's something. So I mean, I love how she would just recontextualize that into something else. So I'm doing that, but you know, but I think one step at a time. I mean, this whole COVID thing is actually a great pain teacher for all of us.
Yeah.
And I mean, for me, and it's always like, you know, if you're going to make plans, the gods are going to laugh at you, you know. So it's, but I think, having said that, it's you still have to be conscious. So it's not about abandoning your consciousness.
Yeah.
You know, you're always on top of that. Yeah. You know, I think that's actually more important. I think the plans can be sort of like this tunnel vision thing. So I think it's for me, it's probably better to be nimble and
just as your clothing are, flex and flow
and open-ended,
and adapting and open-ended,
you know,
yes.
and yeah, and also hopefully compassionate, but with wisdom. So I don't believe in this empty sort of compassion, just, you know, feel sorry for everyone. Yeah. It's like get a bit of wisdom in the mix of that, and then you can actually offer some compassion that actually thought through. Yeah. And that's genuine and sincere, and try and test it.
What a wonderful way to end our conversation with Purrr today. Compassion, thoughtfulness, contribution, flex and flow. And I look forward so much to your collaboration with Akira and you know,
what you have in store. Pauline, it's like the colours, you know, that you're wearing this tangerine today. And
I love
it's like
this colour.
in the chai tea, for instance. I mean, and in fact, what I'm working on, this mini collection I've done, incorporates all of these colours. This salmon, this tangerine, and shades of reds here. I mean, these are actually timeless colours that have actually been adopted by very different cultures. So this is all very Tibetan. Yes. And they're all sort of sacred colours, and then this is all very Renaissance. So you see all of this in early medieval paintings. Coming back, you know, these religious paintings. So to me, it's just a feeling. I mean, I chose these colours, but I think there's something behind that. You know, it's a rebirth. It's deepening, so it's all of that, you know. So I'm really delighted. Yeah. To see this,
my
you know,
beautiful friend Emma designed that.
Yeah, it's just beautiful. just all of this. There's, you know, I mean, they're all holy colours, you know. So I love that. Yes. You know.
And I love those colours. I love those colours, especially in your collection. Alistair, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For being a part of today. It has been my joy.
The pleasure is all mine. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you for joining us for Conversations with Purrr, proudly brought to you by Tiger Purrr Chai, anti-ordinary chai for anti-ordinary human beings. For more conversations like this one, join us at tigerpurrr.com.